The cold silence of space stretched endlessly in every direction. The stars twinkled in the distance, and the deep, black void was as peaceful as it had always been. Humanity had always looked up at the sky with a sense of pride and security. Earth had established itself as a powerful force, surrounded by a network of colonies that spanned across the solar system. The peaceful dominance of human civilization had lasted for generations, but something was wrong. On the outermost edge of human space, where the farthest colonies resided, strange signals began to appear. At first, they were faint and easily dismissed. They were just an anomaly, something that could be ignored. But as days passed, the signals grew stronger, and the pattern became clear. These were not natural, they were artificial. Someone, or something, was out there, trying to make contact. At first it was just a whisper. The signals were too faint for anyone to truly understand, too scattered to form a clear picture. But that was before the fleet. Arrived a small team of scouts aboard the Intrepid. A fast-moving reconnaissance ship was the first to detect the massive fleet of ships heading toward the solar system. The crew of the Intrepid had been tracking the signals for weeks, hoping it would lead them to a breakthrough in alien communication. What they found instead was beyond their imagination. As they got closer, they could see the fleet, dozens of ships huge and imposing, their shapes like nothing humanity had ever seen before. The ships were not sleek or elegant, as humanity's own space vessels had become. They were jagged, angular, and unnervingly silent. They didn't emit any signals, didn't respond to human attempts at communication. They just moved forward, cutting through space like they had been here before, like they owned it. The crew of the Intrepid was in shock. They had never seen anything like this. The ships were unlike any species humanity had encountered in its exploration of space. The ships didn't even have the usual signs of propulsion, no large exhaust trails, no energy emissions, nothing. They just moved, as if they defied the laws of physics that humans had come to understand. It was clear, this wasn't something that belonged to the galaxy humanity knew. Report this immediately to command. The captain of the Intrepid, Captain Hale ordered, but his voice betrayed a hint of fear. He knew this was no ordinary discovery. There was something wrong with these ships. Something that didn't sit right in the pit of his stomach. The uneasy silence that followed his command was broken only by the whir of the ship's communication systems as they tried to relay their findings. The message was sent, but it never reached its destination. Moments later, the Intrepid crew lost all contact with Earth. No communication, no warning. The ship's instruments were no longer working properly, and the stars outside the viewport began to shimmer in strange, unsettling patterns. Then a strange low hum filled the ship, a sound that seemed to resonate deep within the crew members' bones. It wasn't just noise, it was something that sent a wave of unease through every person on board. "Captain," said Lieutenant Marlowe, her voice shaking, "what are we dealing with here? This isn't normal. These ships, they're too advanced. We've never seen anything like this." Captain Hale's face was grim as he looked out the viewport. The ships were no longer far away. They were close, too close. And they weren't slowing down. The crew of the Intrepid scrambled to regain control, but every effort they made seemed to be in vain. The strange hum grew louder, and the ship's systems flickered and died. They had no idea what was happening, but they knew it was bad. They were being watched. The alien fleet had arrived at that moment. An alarm blared throughout the ship, signaling the approach of something far more dangerous. Captain Hale's eyes widened as a massive, blinding light flared from one of the alien ships. The Intrepid shook violently, sending crew members tumbling across the room. The ship was hit by an energy pulse so powerful that it threw the crew into darkness. The last thing Captain Hale saw before the ship went silent was the glowing outline of one of the alien ships, looming outside the viewport like a predator in the shadows. Back on Earth, the news was just beginning to break. The mysterious signals, the sudden disappearance of the Intrepid, it all seemed too strange to comprehend. The government issued a statement, dismissing the incident as an isolated event, but the truth was far more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. Humanity's borders were about to be tested. The ships were coming closer, their presence a constant, menacing reminder that the galaxy was much larger and much darker than anyone had ever known. And the worst part, humanity had no idea who or what they were dealing with. The galaxy was stirring, and soon, everyone would know. No species enters human space without facing the consequences. The unseen threat had arrived, and humanity was about to find out what that truly meant. The crew of the Intrepid was gone, disappeared without a trace. The reports that followed their last transmission were fragmented, filled with strange symbols, static, and a sense of desperation. But that was not the only problem. A ripple of panic spread across humanity as the alien fleet drew closer. The signals grew louder, and Earth's defenses began to activate automatically, ready to face an unknown threat they still didn't understand. On the surface, everything appeared calm. Governments, military forces, and civilians tried to continue their lives. But there was an unspoken fear that permeated the air. The mystery of the fleet and the Intrepid's sudden disappearance was only the beginning. It didn't take long before the truth was undeniable. These ships were not like anything humanity had ever encountered. The designs, the energy they emitted, it was clear they were technologically superior to anything in human space. The world's leaders convened in secret meetings, working tirelessly to understand the situation, but there was nothing they could do. No one had ever faced an enemy like this. Every attempt at communication with the alien ships failed. Earth's most advanced defense systems, including laser grids and electromagnetic shields, had been prepared, but they had not been tested. Against such power, the world watched in anxious anticipation, waiting for some kind of breakthrough that might allow them to understand the intentions of the invaders. But each passing hour made it clearer that the situation was slipping beyond their control. Then, the alien fleet made its first move. It wasn't a missile strike. It wasn't a show of brute force. Instead, it was something much more subtle. The massive ships hovered on the outskirts of Earth's orbit, making no attempt to move further into human space. There was no demand, no threatening message, just a calm silence. But in that silence, there was something else. Something that made the hearts of every person on Earth skip a beat. A sudden, overwhelming sense of dread, like a storm building. In the distance, it was only a matter of time before they would act. Back on Earth, the panic was mounting. News agencies broadcast reports of strange energy surges from the alien ships. Flashes of light that lasted only 4 seconds but left lasting impacts on satellites and communications systems. Humanity was unprepared for something like this. With each passing minute, the aliens' power became more apparent. Cities across the globe began to experience strange disruptions, traffic systems shutting down, power grids flickering and failing. It was as if the aliens were testing Earth's defenses, probing humanity's vulnerability. No one could stop it. No one could even comprehend the scale of it. The military was scrambling, sending every available resource to the edges of human space in a desperate attempt to protect their borders. But it was too late for that. A blinding beam of light shot out from the closest alien ship, striking a satellite orbiting Earth. The satellite disintegrated instantly, scattering fragments in all directions. The entire world watched as Earth's defense systems, the ones humanity had spent decades developing, failed to react in time. The beam was unlike any weapon the world had ever seen. It was precise, swift, and devastating. And worse, it came without warning. There were no alarms, no time to react, just the flash of light and the destruction of an asset worth billions. That was the moment humanity knew they were in real danger. The attack was only a warning. In the following hours, more flashes of light filled the sky. This time the target was not a satellite, but a military installation on Earth. In the blink of an eye, an entire base was obliterated, leaving nothing but a charred crater. And still, the alien ships made no move to advance. They hovered, waiting, watching. It was as though they were allowing humanity to feel the weight of their power, knowing that no matter what humans did, the invaders were beyond reach. Military leaders around the world issued a series of emergency broadcasts, urging people to stay calm and prepare for further attacks. They ordered the evacuation of several major cities and directed all forces to focus on securing the airspace. But deep down, everyone knew there was little they could do. Earth's military might had been built on the belief that humanity was untouchable, that no force in the galaxy could challenge its superiority. But now, the entire world was left in a state of confusion and fear. Every satellite, every radar system, every missile defense system, it was all rendered useless against the alien ship's overwhelming power. As the days passed, the situation grew even more dire. The alien ships began to move closer, aligning themselves in a way that suggested they were positioning themselves for something far more catastrophic. The entire world watched as the ships formed an enormous arc across Earth's orbit, blocking the sun's light from reaching vast regions of the planet. The coldness that followed was eerie, sending waves of anxiety through the global population. People stared at the sky, unsure of what would come next. The fear of the unknown weighed heavily on their minds. The attacks continued, sporadic but unrelenting. Each one was a reminder of the enemy's power, something humanity couldn't even hope to match. The alien ships didn't need to land to wreak havoc. They were capable of bringing destruction from afar, with weapons and technology that humanity had no defense against. There was no plan, no escape. The feeling of helplessness spread like wildfire across Earth. In a dark room deep beneath the Earth's surface, leaders from all corners of the world gathered. They were not there to debate what should be done, because they already knew the answer. There was no plan to defeat these aliens, not yet. Anyway, they could only wait. The cost was already becoming clear, and as the alien fleet loomed overhead, humanity's greatest test was about to begin. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about showing the universe that humanity had the strength to stand, even in the face of the impossible. But as the first few days passed, one thing became clear: the galaxy had underestimated humanity, and now they would know the true cost of challenging human space. The game had only just begun. The world was at its breaking point. Earth, a once thriving center of human civilization, was now a planet in turmoil. The alien fleet, still hovering ominously in Earth's orbit, showed no signs of retreating. Its silent menace was an reminder that humanity was facing an existential crisis. Cities were in chaos, governments were scrambling to retain control, and the military's might, once considered unrivaled, had been reduced to a mere symbol of helplessness. Yet amidst the panic and uncertainty, something remarkable was beginning to happen. Across the globe, in hidden bunkers, military bases, and secret facilities, humans were coming together in a way they never had before. The divisions of nations, cultures, and ideologies began to fade into the background as the reality of the threat unified them. The alien invaders had done what no human adversary had ever managed: brought the entire species together. But this unity wasn't born out of hope. It was born from the sheer will to survive. In a dimly lit war room deep in the heart of the United States, General Aidan Stone stood before a large holographic map. The blueprints of Earth's military defenses were laid out before him, but they looked almost laughable now. The alien fleet had neutralized every military satellite, wiped out major bases, and dismantled Earth's advanced weaponry with ease. The weapons that humanity had once relied on had no effect against the alien technology. In a single coordinated strike, the aliens had proven themselves to be far superior, but General Stone wasn't about to give up. "We don't have the luxury of time," he muttered to himself as he studied the map. He wasn't just looking for an answer, he was searching for the key to humanity's survival. Meanwhile, in the European Union's emergency headquarters, a similar meeting was taking place. Leaders from every corner of the planet were gathered to discuss their next move. The mood in the room was grim, with each representative aware of the gravity of the situation. But they knew one thing: humanity could not afford to cower. They had to fight back. "This is our chance to show the galaxy that Earth is not to be underestimated," said Dr. Natalia Voss, a leading scientist who had worked on Earth's most advanced space exploration projects. Her voice was steady. The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air. "We may not have their technology, but we have something they don't. We have ingenuity, creativity, and the strength of a united species." Dr. Voss's words sparked a fire in the room. For the first time since the alien fleet had arrived, there was a flicker of hope. The humans had lost many battles, but the war was not yet over. The aliens might have superior weapons, but humanity had something the invaders couldn't replicate: resilience. Across the Pacific, the leaders of Asia's largest nations were working together, pooling resources and intelligence in an effort to develop a counteroffensive. While the military might have been compromised, the people of Earth weren't willing to go down without a fight. Scientists, engineers, and former military strategists all contributed their expertise, sharing ideas and techniques from across the globe. The desperation that had gripped the planet just days ago had evolved into something far more powerful: determination. People who had never worked together before found themselves collaborating in ways they never thought possible. This was no longer a matter of survival for individual nations, it was a matter of survival for the human race. At the heart of this new collaboration were the engineers and technicians working on the development of a secret weapon. They had discovered a flaw in the alien fleet's technology: a small, seemingly insignificant weakness in their communication system. It wasn't much, but it was enough. If humanity could exploit this vulnerability, they could disrupt the fleet's control over its ships, potentially giving Earth a fighting chance. But time running out, the engineers worked tirelessly, designing a device that could hack into the alien fleet's systems. It was a long shot. No one had ever attempted anything like this before, but it was their only hope. The entire world held its breath as the device was prepared for launch. The mission was risky, and failure meant certain destruction. But the engineers were driven by a single thought: humanity had to fight back, or be erased. Thus the plan unfolded. A new sense of purpose surged through the people of Earth. Military forces, now operating under a single banner, gathered their remaining strength and prepared for what could be their final stand. In the skies above, Earth's remaining fleets took to the stars, ready to defend their home in a way they never had before. This was no longer a war of nations. It was a war for the survival of the human race. The first wave of ships launched into space, leaving Earth's atmosphere in a blaze of fire and light. They were small in number, but they were a symbol of humanity's resilience. Each ship, carrying soldiers, pilots, and engineers, had one mission: to reach the alien fleet and execute the hacking plan. Time was of the essence. They had to get in, disable the aliens' systems, and return before the aliens could retaliate. As the ships approached the alien fleet, the tension was palpable. Every heart on Earth seemed to beat in unison, holding its breath as the first ship crossed into the enemy's reach. The alien fleet loomed ahead, massive and imposing. But humanity's resolve was stronger. The Exodus, the flagship of the human fleet, led the charge. With all systems running at full capacity, it braved the enemy's fire, getting closer to the heart of the alien forces. Engage the hack. The mission commander, Captain Sarah McAllister, ordered, her voice steady as the gravity of the moment weighed heavily on her. The device was ready. It was now or never. As the countdown began, the ship shuddered under enemy fire. Every second felt like a lifetime, but the team had no choice but to press on. The hacking device was their only chance. In that moment, the entire planet waited, eyes fixed on the battle unfolding above. Would humanity survive, or would this be the final chapter in Earth's history? The world was holding its breath, ready to witness if humanity had what it took to reclaim their place in the galaxy, or if they would fall before a greater force. Whatever happened next would be remembered forever as the turning point of the human race's struggle for survival. The universe had shifted, and the scales of power were about to be tested in a way humanity had never imagined. The Exodus, now a symbol of Earth's last hope, continued to blaze a path through the cold emptiness of space. Captain Sarah fingers hovered over the controls, her eyes locked on the massive alien fleet ahead. The air was thick with tension. Every person aboard the ship understanding that this could be the last fight humanity would ever face. The odds were against them, but the spark of hope was alive just barely. As the human fleet moved forward, the alien ships remained silent. They loomed like colossal shadows in the distance, their silent menace more terrifying than any display of force. The gap between them and the human forces grew smaller by the second, the distance closing with each heartbeat. The battle had begun, but it was more than just a physical clash. It was a battle of wills, a test of human resolve against an enemy whose power far exceeded anything Earth had ever faced. "Target locked," said Lieutenant Harper, her voice breaking the uneasy silence. "We're within firing range." "Are we ready?" Captain McAllister didn't hesitate. Ready as we'll ever be. The plan was simple but terrifying. The device designed to hack the alien fleet had to be deployed directly into the heart of their forces, but getting close enough to deliver the signal was no small feat. The alien ships had been relentless, with their weapons devastating everything in their path. The Exodus wasn't the only ship in the fleet, but it was the most advanced and the most prepared for this mission. The other ships were tasked with distracting the alien forces, holding their attention long enough for the Exodus to do what had to be done, but no one had accounted for the aliens' counter-dash strategy. As the human ships charged toward the heart of the alien fleet, something unexpected happened. The aliens, who had been eerily passive up until now, activated their own weapons. With lightning speed, they unleashed a devastating barrage, sending shockwaves throughout the human fleet. The first wave of human ships exploded in a fiery crescendo of destruction, their debris scattering across the void like shattered glass. The Exodus and its remaining allies barely avoided the onslaught, but they were not unscathed. The shields flickered, dimming with each impact, and the warning lights filled the bridge. "Shields at 50%, shouted the engineer, panic creeping into her voice. "If we take another hit like that, we won't." Captain McAllister cut her off, her voice as firm as ever. "Keep moving, we can't stop now." The stakes had never been higher. Earth's final stand was happening now, and there could be no turning back. The human forces had been severely weakened, but they were still determined to push forward. The hacking device needed to reach the heart of the alien fleet. Without it, Earth would fall. As they closed in on their target, McAllister couldn't help but wonder, what if the aliens were not just invaders, but a test of humanity's place in the cosmos? They had underestimated the humans before. Perhaps they would make the same mistake again. The distance between the Exodus and the alien fleet narrowed further. But with every step closer, the tension in the air grew thicker. The alien fleet had been waiting for this, and now that the humans were within range, they seemed ready to finish it. But just when it seemed like they had the upper hand, an unexpected sight flashed across the viewscreen. Hundreds of human ships, battered but still fighting, emerged from the chaos. They weren't just ships. They were humanity's last line of defense, an army of defiance. The remaining human fleet had arrived. They came out of the darkness, firing relentlessly at the alien ships. The attackers knew they couldn't win. They didn't care. It was about sending a message. Humanity would never surrender. Hold steady, McAllister ordered, her eyes flicking between the control panel and the viewscreen, watching the human forces give everything they had in the face of certain annihilation. The human fleet didn't retreat, didn't hesitate. They fought with a kind of desperation, with the knowledge that their survival depended on every shot they fired. The hacking device was only moments away from being deployed, but it wasn't just the weapon that mattered. It was the courage behind it. It was the unity of a species that had been tested beyond measure but refused to break. As the Exodus inched closer to its target, Captain McAllister's mind raced with calculations, with the understanding that this moment would define everything. Would they succeed, or would this be humanity's final battle? The alien fleet, momentarily distracted by the desperate counterattack, gave them the opening they needed. The device, this small, unassuming piece of technology, was deployed from the Exodus, drifting silently toward the heart of the enemy's command ship. The entire bridge held its breath as the countdown began. The device had to work. It had 3 McAllister whispered under her breath. The countdown was almost over, and everything rested on this moment. The device activated, sending a pulse through the alien fleet's communication systems. For a split second, everything froze. The alien ships stopped moving, as if they had been hit by some invisible force. The sudden silence that followed was deafening. It was a brief pause in the battle, one filled with uncertainty and anticipation, and then, the explosion came. The hacking device had worked. The pulse had hit the core of the alien fleet's systems, and with it, chaos erupted. The once impenetrable alien ships began to falter, their coordinated attacks disrupted, their communications scrambled. The tides of battle had turned. The human fleet, emboldened by this unexpected victory, pressed on, using their newfound advantage, to strike with renewed force. The fight wasn't over, not by a long shot, but for the first time since the alien fleet had entered human space, humanity had gained the upper hand. As the battle raged on, Captain McAllister's mind wandered for a moment, remembering what had brought them here. Humanity had stood on the brink of extinction, but it had not bowed. It had fought, tooth and nail, against overwhelming odds, and as the alien ships faltered, humanity proved that no matter the enemy, no matter the challenge, Earth would never go down without a fight. The battle had only just begun, but humanity's spirit was stronger than ever. The battle raged on. The once unyielding alien fleet was now faltering, its systems disrupted by the unexpected strike from the human forces. For the first time since the invaders arrived, humanity had a glimmer of hope. The hacking device, a simple piece of technology, had caused chaos within the alien command structure, disorienting their ships and throwing their once impressive coordination into disarray. It was a moment of triumph, but only a moment. The tide of battle had shifted, but victory was still far from assured. Captain McAllister stood at the helm of the Exodus, her fingers gripped tightly around the controls. Her eyes darted across the battlefield as human ships, now reinvigorated, pressed their advantage. The alien forces, while disoriented, were still formidable. They regrouped quickly, using their advanced weaponry to counter the human assault. The massive ships, once hovering passively, now began to fight back with deadly precision. Beams of energy shot through the void of space, tearing apart human vessels with terrifying ease. McAllister's heart raced, her pulse in sync with the chaos outside. She had always known that humanity's strength lay not in superior technology or firepower, but in its determination, its unbreakable will to survive. But that strength was being tested now like never before. The human forces, though fighting valiantly, were losing ground. For every alien ship that fell, two more seemed to take its place. The Exodus shuddered as an enemy beam struck the hull, sending a shockwave through the ship. The lights flickered and the bridge crew gripped their stations, bracing for another hit. McAllister's mind raced. They had a small advantage now, but the aliens were beginning to adapt. Their systems were recovering from the hack, their ships moving in unison once more. If humanity didn't act quickly, this brief moment of hope would slip away and the alien fleet would regain its full strength. "We need to do more," McAllister said, her voice low but determined. "Prepare for a direct assault. All ships focus everything on their flagship." Her orders echoed across the fleet, and the human ships began to realign, shifting their formation to target the heart of the alien fleet. The flagship, the largest of the alien ships, commanding the rest of the fleet, was the key. If they could take it down, they would cripple the enemy's coordination and possibly force them to retreat. The Exodus led the charge, its engines roaring as it pushed forward into the thick of the battle. The human ships followed closely behind, firing their weapons in a coordinated effort. The alien fleet responded in kind, unleashing a barrage of deadly beams that lit up the dark expanse of space like a deadly fireworks display. Human ships were torn apart in seconds, their shields failing to withstand the onslaught. The loss of every ship was a blow to humanity's morale, but they pushed on, knowing that their survival depended on this final push. As the Exodus closed in on the flagship, McAllister could feel the weight of the moment. This was it, their last chance. The ship's engines groaned under the pressure as they maneuvered through the debris and chaos, narrowly avoiding enemy fire. Every second felt like an eternity. But McAllister held firm. The Exodus had to reach the flagship, no matter the cost. "Lock onto their main weapon systems," McAllister ordered. "We're taking out their power source." The Exodus's targeting systems locked onto the flagship's central core. The human ships, now close behind, aligned their weapons with deadly precision, focusing all their fire on the alien vessel's weak points. The space around them seemed to hold its breath, the tension almost unbearable. McAllister's hand shook as she watched the enemy ship through the viewport, its massive form looming larger with each passing second. And then, with a deafening roar, the first blast struck the flagship. The explosion was almost blinding. The flagship's shields failed, and its outer hull cracked open, sending a shockwave through space. For a moment it seemed like the alien fleet might break, but the flagship wasn't finished yet. It returned fire, its weapons firing at full strength, but now, it was vulnerable. The human ships pressed on, pouring everything they had into the heart of the alien vessel. The Exodus took another hit, this time from the flagship itself, sending sparks flying across the bridge. The ship shuddered violently, and McAllister was thrown forward, her face slamming into the console. Blood trickled from a gash on her forehead, but she didn't flinch. There was no time to think about injuries. They had come too far. She pushed herself back into her seat, her hands quickly returning to the controls. "Target their core. Fire everything," she shouted. The Exodus's weapons fired one last time, and the beam from the ship's main cannon connected with the alien flagship's central core. There was a brief pause, a moment where time seemed to stop, and then, with a cataclysmic explosion, the flagship erupted in a brilliant ball of fire. The shock wave sent out ripples across the battlefield, scattering alien ships in every direction. For a moment, everything went quiet. The enemy fleet seemed to pause, as if stunned by the sudden loss of their command ship. Human ships, battered and broken, regrouped, their morale soaring with the sight of the flagship's destruction. The aliens, it seemed, had not anticipated this kind of resistance. They had underestimated humanity's will to fight, but the victory was short-lived. The alien fleet, now thrown into disarray, regrouped quickly. They had lost their flagship, but their forces were far from finished. A new wave of alien ships arrived, more massive than the first, and they advanced with terrifying speed. The loss of their command ship had not broken them, it had only made them more determined. The galaxy, it seemed, was watching as humanity's fate hung by a thread, as the Exodus limped through the void. McAllister's mind raced. They had won a victory, yes, but the war was far from over. The alien fleet was relentless, and their forces were still overwhelming. But for the first time since the battle had begun, humanity had a glimmer of hope. They had broken through. They had shown the universe that they were not a species to be easily conquered, but now, more than ever, it was clear that the true cost of this war had only just begun, and humanity would pay that cost, no matter what it took. The Exodus drifted through space, its hull battered and scarred, the once gleaming ship now a testament to the brutal war humanity had fought. Captain McAllister stood silently at the bridge, watching the stars stretch out before her. The flagship's destruction had been a triumph, but it had come at a heavy cost. The human fleet had taken tremendous losses, and the alien forces were not yet defeated. The battle was far from over. In fact, the situation had only grown more complicated. Sudden arrival of a new wave of alien ships had caught humanity off guard. These ships were larger, faster, and more advanced than the ones they had fought before. The alien fleet was regrouping, adapting, and learning from their losses. Humanity had dealt a heavy blow, but it was clear now that the fight for Earth's survival was only escalating. McAllister's fingers hovered over the console, her thoughts racing. If humanity was to have any chance of winning, they needed to act quickly. Report, Lieutenant Harper, McAllister asked, her voice steady, but tinged with the weight of the moment. Harper, the ship's communications officer, was absorbed in her data, scanning the latest readings. Captain, it's worse than we thought. The alien fleet is adapting faster than we anticipated. They're shifting formations, regaining their lost ships, and increasing their offensive firepower. Do we have any advantage left? McAllister asked, her voice quiet but firm. Harper hesitated. We have the hacking device. It's still working, but it's only a temporary solution. The aliens are compensating for the disruption. We don't have much time. The words hit McAllister like a punch to the gut. Humanity's greatest weapon, the one thing that had given them a fighting chance, was losing its effectiveness. If the aliens figured out how to counter the device completely, humanity's last hope would be gone. The situation was growing desperate. The battle for survival had become a race against time. All ships, fall back to formation. McAllister ordered. The Exodus's engines roared as it shifted position, and the remaining human fleet followed suit. It was clear now that they needed to regroup, to buy themselves more time. But every second they spent retreating was a second the alien forces would use to strengthen their hold on the galaxy. As the human fleet moved to new positions, McAllister's mind turned over the next move. What if they couldn't defeat the alien fleet with brute force? What if they had to outsmart them, find a way to strike at the heart of the enemy without facing their full might? The thought felt like a lifeline, but it was a long shot. Humanity had already fought its way through overwhelming odds. Could they do it again? Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden explosion that rocked the Exodus. The entire bridge shook, and alarms blared as the ship's shields flickered and failed. McAllister's heart skipped a beat. The aliens were closing in. The human fleet had no time to plan, no time to regroup. They were under attack again, and this time, the enemy wasn't pulling any punches. We've lost shields on port side, cried the ship's engineer. Hull integrity at 40%. We need to disengage immediately. McAllister's gaze remained fixed on the view screen where the alien ships advanced, their weapons already charging for another round. The Exodus had taken too much damage. They couldn't afford to keep fighting like this. A quick glance around the bridge revealed the truth. Everyone was feeling it. The fatigue, the fear, the sense that this could be their last stand. But McAllister wasn't ready to surrender. Not yet. Not after everything they had been through. Get the Exodus into the asteroid belt, she commanded. The asteroid field, a massive collection of rock and debris, wasn't just a hiding place. It was a tactical advantage. The asteroids could block enemy fire, and the small size of the rocks made it harder for the alien ships to target them. The Exodus could use the field to buy them the precious time they needed to regroup and plan their next move. Captain, are you sure about this? Asked Harper, her voice full of uncertainty. We'll be in a confined space. The aliens will have the advantage if we get caught, I'm sure. It's our only shot, McAllister replied. The ship veered sharply toward the asteroid belt, the crew bracing as the ship swerved to avoid large rocks. The alien ships followed, but as they entered the belt, their advantage started to slip away. The Exodus was faster, smaller, able to maneuver through the narrow spaces between the asteroids. The alien ships, massive and unwieldy, struggled to keep up. For a few moments, the Exodus was safe, but McAllister knew it wouldn't last. The aliens would figure out their position soon enough. The Exodus's shields were on the verge of collapse, and the crew was exhausted. They had fought for so long, it was only a matter of time before the enemy caught up. We need to strike back, Captain, Harper said, her voice urgent. The hacking device still has a chance, but we need to get close enough to their command vessel. If we disable it, no, McAllister interrupted, her voice sharp. The Exodus can't survive another direct hit. We're not going to make it to their command ship. We need something more unexpected, something they won't see coming. The crew fell silent, the weight of her words settling over them like a heavy fog. What could they possibly do to win at this point? The aliens had superior technology, a fleet of seemingly endless ships, and weapons that could annihilate humanity with a single blow. It seemed hopeless, but humanity had done the impossible before. Was it really so far-fetched to think that could do it again? I have an idea, McAllister said, her voice steady once more. It's a risk, but it's the only shot we've got. The crew leaned in, their attention fixed on their captain. The silence in the bridge deepened. They all knew this was it, the final, desperate move. Either they would succeed, or humanity would fall. McAllister's fingers flew over the console. She had a plan, one that relied on everything humanity had learned during the battle. It was a long shot, but long shots had been all they had left. The Exodus's engines roared to life once more, pushing the ship deeper into the asteroid field. Humanity's last stand had begun, and Captain McAllister was leading the charge, determined to make the enemy pay for underestimating the resilience of humankind. The galaxy would remember the cost. The Exodus was bruised, battered, and nearly out of fuel, but it was still alive. Against all odds, humanity had managed to survive this far, but victory was still far from certain. Captain McAllister stood at the bridge, staring into the void of space. The asteroid belt had given them a brief respite, but it had also forced them to make their final, desperate move. The alien fleet was closing in, more relentless than ever, and the remnants of humanity's forces were dwindling. The odds were stacked higher than ever before, but McAllister wasn't ready to give up. She had seen humanity rise in the face of impossible odds, and that spirit-ending unyielding was still alive. Even with the alien ships bearing down on them, she refused to accept defeat. The hacking device had given them a glimpse of hope, but it wasn't enough. The aliens were learning, adapting faster than they had expected. The power of their fleet was almost overwhelming. But what they didn't know was that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology or tactics, it was heart. And it was still beating. A sudden beep broke McAllister from her thoughts. It was Harper, her voice a mix of urgency and resolve. Captain, we've detected something strange. The alien fleet, they're not moving as we expected. They single quotes gathering. McAllister's eyes snapped at the screen. The alien ships, once so synchronized and precise, had begun to slow their advance, regrouping in an unfamiliar formation. It was almost as though they were preparing for something, a strategy that humanity had yet to figure out. Whatever it was, it didn't look good. They're planning something, McAllister muttered. Something big. The crew exchanged nervous glances, but McAllister held her ground. Prepare to engage at maximum power, she ordered, her voice unshaken. We don't know what they're planning, but we have to stop it before it's too late. The Exodus lurched forward, its engines whining in protest. The remaining human ships followed suit, moving into position for one final stand. The galaxy, which had once seemed so vast and indifferent, was now a battlefield. Humanity's future, once secure, now hung by a thread. But they weren't going to go down without a fight. Not now, not after everything they had sacrificed. The alien ships, now gathered in a massive formation, began to glow with a strange, unsettling energy. The light from their hulls was growing brighter, as if they were charging up some terrible weapon. The air around the bridge seemed to vibrate with the intensity of it. The universe held its breath. Captain, their energy levels are off the charts, said the ship's engineer, his voice tight with fear. Whatever they're about to do, we're not going to survive it unless we stop them now. McAllister gripped the armrests of her chair, her knuckles white. There was no more time for tactics, no more time for hesitation. The aliens had shown they could destroy human ships with ease, but now they were preparing for something far more catastrophic. The energy gathering within the alien fleet was building to a crescendo. They were preparing to unleash a weapon, the likes of which humanity had never seen. Get us close, McAllister ordered. We need to get within range of their command ship, now. The Exodus sped toward the heart of the alien fleet, dodging blasts from enemy ships as they tried to break their path. Each shot felt like it could be the final blow, but resolve only strengthened. The ship's engines screamed in protest, but she held her course. Humanity's fate was tied to this moment. Shields are failing, yelled the engineer, we're losing power. Keep pushing forward. McAllister shouted, her voice a rallying cry. We can't stop now. As they approached the heart of the alien fleet, the Exodus was shaking violently. The hull was barely holding together under the constant barrage of enemy fire. The alien ships were getting ready to fire their weapon, and it was clear that if they succeeded, humanity would be finished. But McAllister had one final plan. Prepare the last payload, she commanded, her voice steady but filled with intensity. The crew scrambled to execute her orders. The final desperate measure humanity had left was a risky one, but there was no other choice. They had one chance to take down the alien command ship, and they had to make it count. The last remaining human ships gathered around the Exodus, forming a protective ring. As the enemy prepared their devastating weapon, humanity's final weapon, one that had been designed in secret, was deployed. It wasn't much, but it was all they had, a powerful energy pulse, designed to disrupt the alien fleet's communications and core systems. The Exodus surged forward, the energy pulse locked and ready. With a sharp cry of "now," McAllister gave the command. The pulse shot from the ship's cannon, flying toward the heart of the alien fleet, its light cutting through the darkness like a spear. Time seemed to slow as the pulse struck its target. For a moment, there was nothing. The alien fleet stood frozen, as if time itself had stopped. Then, the silence was shattered by a massive explosion that rocked the very fabric of space. The alien command ship, the heart of their fleet, exploded in a burst of light so bright, it threatened to blind the entire crew of the Exodus. The shockwave rippled outward, scattering the remaining alien ships like leaves in the wind. For a moment, everything went quiet. The alien fleet had collapsed. McAllister stood, her chest heaving. With the strain of the moment, her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of what they had accomplished. The Exodus had been damaged beyond repair, but humanity had won. Against all odds, against a force far stronger than anything they had ever imagined. They had fought back and they had prevailed. The surviving human ships floated in the vast emptiness, the remnants of their enemies scattered across the stars. It was a bittersweet victory. The cost had been immense lives lost, entire fleets destroyed, but humanity had shown the universe something it could never forget. They had defied the part impossible, and the galaxy would remember the cost. The silence in the bridge was broken by Harper's voice, shakier now but filled with awe. "Captain, we did it." McAllister didn't speak right away. She stared out at the stars, the immense weight of their victory pressing on her. The galaxy had been shaken, but humanity had proven that no force, no matter how overwhelming, could extinguish their spirit. They had fought, they had survived, and in that moment, they knew one thing for sure. No species would ever again enter human space without remembering the cost.